So looking at visiting the past using our past, in that short audio that we're going to hear about this woman and the caves, we're going to hear the use of the past simple tense, which we looked at the rules, but let's refresh our memory about using the past simple. So remember the past simple because we're talking about what happened at a time in the past that is not now, and then also talking about how can we use the past simple when we talk about places that we visited ourselves and tell people what did we see, what was it like. So let's look at just some grammar to refresh again before we hear that audio again. The grammar that we had was from the last lesson, and it was here, the past simple. So remember the regular is when we have the subject. So it could be I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and we add the ed. We call this the regular. And the irregular is just some verbs that have their own rule. To make a negative, you add didn't verb. Okay, so I just want to go to number 5. Or number 4, you know, all the verbs in the past end in ed? No, because irregular have their own rule. Does the verb change in the third person? No. So we say I, you, he, she, it, we, they, all for all. So all subjects, then the action. So you put an ed on the regular one for all the subjects. And the auxiliary verb for the negative is didn't. We call this the auxiliary verb. So it's not the main verb because the main verb is this one. So for example, I didn't see my friend yesterday. I didn't study last weekend. Okay, I just want to go to number 5 because when we hear the audio, we can and listen to this you know, information about this woman and this caves. These are the sentences that we're hearing. So in number 5, you'll hear that it says humans made. Okay, so made comes from the verb to make. So humans made the caves about 1,000 years ago. Many people lived. Okay, so this is from an irregular, regular verb. It just has the ed. So many people lived in them until the 15th century. They built houses. Okay, so built is an irregular verb. You can see it does not have the ed. So they built houses and moved to towns. So moved is regular, it has the ed. So Yandu Vista, this is the woman that we will hear in the audio, was. That comes from the verb to be. So remember last lesson we said was. So she was born in a cave. Then we have she grew up. So grew up is an interesting action. To grow up means where somebody spent their childhood. So you could be born in a different place to where you grew up. So she grew up, and also another verb to use was she was raised. Okay, she was raised here with her family. Now we're going to use a negative. We're going to say they, plural, as the subject. They didn't have. So remember in the past, in the negative past, you have to use the auxiliary verb didn't, and then you have the verb. You don't add an ed. They didn't have, they didn't study, they didn't see, they didn't go. Okay, so you do not add the ed to this verb. You leave it in the auxiliary. So they didn't have water in the cave. Okay, so they didn't have water in the cave. She went. Okay, went comes from the verb go in the past. So anytime you want to say, I went somewhere yesterday or last night or on the weekend, she went to the river every day and bought. So brought comes from the verb to bring. So she brought water up the mountain. Okay, so just practicing our past simple with the regular verbs and with the irregular, and then also in the negative by saying didn't. So now we're going to hear that audio again. It was this one with the woman, and there's a fire here and these caves. So it's a big rock. You could see all these caves here. So listen again, now that you know those past verbs, and see if you can answer these questions again. So very similar to the sentences that we did before. Okay, so it's going to tell us where these caves are, in what region, when did humans make these caves, many people lived in them until which century, and, you know, Yandu Bista, this woman, okay, talking about this woman. So let's listen now and again hear those past simple verbs.
Track 60, Unit 6B.
The Mustang region is in the Himalayan mountains of northern Nepal, and it's famous for its ancient caves. Humans made the caves about 1,000 years ago, and many people lived in them until the 15th century, before they built houses and moved to towns. The caves were warm and dry, and they were safe because of their location. Even today, you can find people who lived in the caves. This woman, Yandu Bista, was born in a cave, and she grew up here with her family. Life was difficult. They didn't have water in the cave, so she went to the river every day and brought water up the mountain. In the end, her family moved to the town, but she says, "I like living in a cave better."
Okay, so now we heard the audio. So the caves are in the Mustang region of northern Nepal. So next to India, that's where these caves were. Humans made the cave about 1,000. So this is how we say it, 1,000, or you can write it like this, 1,000. So remember, in English, we put a comma after numbers that go over 99. So you could say 1,000 years ago, they made these caves. Many people lived in them until the 15th century. Okay, so remember, we can write it like this, 15th century. We must put the TH like above. You see how I've put it like that, and then a capital C, the 15th century. So remember, that is the years from 1400 to 1499. So that's when humans lived in these caves. Very different to now because we live in homes. And the caves were warm and dry. So they were good to protect from the outside weather. So if there was a storm or wind or rain, you could stay inside the cave and be dry and warm. Yandu Bista, that woman that we saw, was born. So remember, we use this verb was born. We use the verb to be when we talk about where someone was born. So she was born in the caves. And In the end, her family moved to the town, but she says, I like living in a cave better. Okay, so she really liked her life in the caves. So again, these were where these sentences came from. Humans made the caves about 1,000 years ago. Many people lived in them until the 15th century. They built houses and moved to towns. Yandu Bista was born in a cave. She grew up here with her family. They didn't have water in the cave. She went to the river every day and brought water up the mountain. Okay, so let's look at now some irregular verbs. I was, so we use subject, I. We know the verb to be was when we talk about where we were born. So my sentence would be, I was born in 1985. So you need to write a sentence that is true for you. So just put the year that you were born, and that's how you say it. I was born in 1985. 2, I grew up in a small town. Now, this is my information that is true for me. You have to write for yourself. So maybe you could say, I grew up in the village, I grew up in the hills, I grew up in the mountains, or I grew up in a big city, or I grew up in the capital city, whatever information is true for you, with my family. So for me, I grew up in a small town in Western Australia with my family. And remember, grew up means, where did you spend your childhood? I went, so went comes from the verb go. I went to my first school when I was 4 years old. So maybe you went when you were 5. It's very common. Or maybe you went when you were a lot younger. So you need to write your age. When did you go to your first school? I didn't get a bike from my parents, but I got one from my grandparents when I was 7. Or maybe you can say, I got a bike from my parents when I was 6 years old. Okay, so when did your parents give you a bike? Or if they didn't, then you can say, but I got one from my grandparents. Or maybe you never got a bike. Then you would say, I never got a bike from my parents. And I didn't have a weekend job. So some people, when they're teenagers, before they're adults, they work. So for me, when I was a teenager, I didn't. I'm using a negative. I didn't have a job. Or maybe you could say, I did. I had to work very hard. I did have a 7-day job. And I left home when I was 20. You can put which year you left home. So you could say, I left home when I was, whichever age is true for you. Okay, let's look at questions. How do we ask questions in the past? The same as how we can give people information and tell them what we did or where we were born or what we did. Now we can ask a question. So we can say, start with the verb to be, was or were, and then the subject. We can use those W's, you know, who, what, where, when. The verb to be, subject, verb. Okay, we'll practice them in a minute. You can use the W again with did, subject, verb. Or you can ask a question with did, subject, verb. And if you ask someone this question, like, did you study yesterday? You can respond, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. So, when did you travel to Paris? Is an example of using did. So let's listen to a short audio. It's a conversation, and they're going to be using these question words. We're going to be hearing two people talking about their weekend. And listen to how they ask, how was your weekend? Because one of the ways that we can ask someone about their weekend, what did they do? We can just say, how was your weekend? Okay, how was your weekend? And it means you could say what you did. Was it good? What happened? So there's going to be a lot of did when you answer how was your weekend. So let's listen to a short audio and then we'll talk about the grammar. So how was your weekend? This is the audio, and then try to answer these questions here. So you could see we have, I'll just close. We have the questions here. Okay, to make sure we can hear the conversation and just fill in the missing word. Okay, so conversation with how was your weekend?
Track 62, Unit 6B.
Hi, how was your weekend?
It was great, thanks.
What did you do?
I went to Birmingham.
Oh, did you go shopping?
No, I didn't. I went to the museum.
Oh, right. What did you see there?
An exhibition about the lives of people from the 15th century. It was fantastic.
Did you go with anyone?
I didn't go to the museum with anyone, but I met an old friend afterwards for lunch.
Okay, so with that conversation we heard, so hi, how was your weekend? It was great, thanks. You could say it was great, or I had a good weekend, or my weekend was really good. So make sure you're using was because it's in the past, it's not happening now. You're saying my weekend, that's the subject, was good. It was good, thanks. A question, what did you do? So what did you do means what activities did you do? What action? What did you do? Like where did you go? Who did you see? So what did you do? And you can see the response was, I went to Birmingham. So that's probably a place. I went to the markets. I went to the beach. I went, and then you say where. Oh, did you go shopping? So we can start a question. We know with did, as we said before. So did you go shopping? Okay, it's a question. No, I didn't. So remember to respond, you say, no, I didn't. So no, I didn't. If it was yes, you would say, yes, I did. All right, what did you see there? So good question. What did you see there? So remember, we don't want to repeat the location. So we say there. That means the place that you told me before. And remember, did verb. So it's not what did you saw there, because we don't, remember with the did, you don't put the ed. So what did you see there? What did you study? What did you do? What did you buy? So what did you see there? An exhibition about the lives of people from the 15th century. It was fantastic. So when you really like something, you could say it was great. It was fantastic. It was amazing. It was really good. Did you go with anyone? So that's a good question. Did you go with anyone? Did you go with anyone? And she responds, I didn't. So again, a short way, you could just say again, no, I didn't. So you don't have to repeat. You just say, no, I didn't. But she says here, I didn't go to the museum with anyone, but I met an old friend afterwards for lunch. Okay, so a little short conversation, good questions. What did you do? Did you go shopping? What did you see there? Did you go with anyone? Okay, talking about these were the rules here. How do we ask a question in the past? So this was using mostly the did to start the question and one of the W's, what? What did you do there? Okay, so we can make up some of our own questions. I'll just give you some very common ways. You can ask someone, what did you do on the weekend? Okay. For example, yesterday, maybe I went to the markets, or on the weekend, remember you put the time phrase in the beginning? I went to the markets. What did you get up to on the weekend? That's another common way to ask someone. It's the same question as before. What did you do on the weekend? Or you can say, what did you get up to on the weekend? That's a common expression that native speakers use. Did you have a good weekend? Pretty simple. And remember, did questions, you reply with, yes, I did. Or you could say, no, I didn't. I had a very bad weekend. And then you can say why it was bad. Did you do much on the weekend? Did you do anything on the weekend? Okay, so that's different ways that we can ask. This is a short conversation as an example. So we've got a person A and a person B. So person A can be Lucy, B will be Curly. So practicing asking someone about what did they do on the weekend. Did you do anything interesting on the weekend?
Yes, I did. I won the
Yeah, so yes, I did. Remember how we respond? And then I went, that comes from the verb go. So in the past, I went, it's irregular. I went to the movies. I saw, that comes from the verb to see, it's irregular. I saw the latest movie by Tom Cruise. Yeah, so how is a very good question. How did you get there? Like, did you take a car? Did you go with someone? Did you take Uber? Like, how did you get there? Got, irregular.
Yeah, with my friend.
Yeah, I parked in the car park. Yeah, so regular, ED, I parked. Yeah, exactly. So we could just say, no, I didn't, or you could just say, nah. That's very, very common. And as you know, as Australians, we like to just be like, nah, not much. Actually, nah, not much. Nah, not much. But that's a good question. You know, did you do anything else afterwards? So you could see in this conversation, somebody is asking someone what they did on the weekend. So remember, you only talk about the weekend, not last year or the weekend before. And then you could see it was all about the one topic. They went to the movies. So they said, okay, what did you see? How did you get there? So you're going to create a conversation about people asking each other what they did on the weekend. So I have some examples here, really good examples. We're not doing the weekend. We are doing the weekend, but we're going to imagine that you visited an interesting place on the weekend and that you're telling someone, where did you go? So let's read some of the conversations before you write your own. So this one is from Jimena, and she says, what did you do last weekend? Sebastian says, I visited the museum downtown. There were some fascinating exhibits. Really? I missed out. What kind of exhibits did they have? Sebastian says they had a history exhibit about ancient civilization and another one on modern art. It was quite diverse. I wish I joined you. Did you enjoy it? Yes, it was amazing. I learned a lot about different cultures and the contributions to life. What did you do? I spent the weekend at home. I watched a couple of classic movies. It was a relaxing time. Sounds nice. Which movies did you watch? I watched Casablanca and Gone with the Wind. They never get old. Speaking of movies, I saw a great film on Friday night. It was a suspense thriller. Oh, really? What was it called? It was called The Silent Witness. The plot kept me on the edge of my seat. I'll have to check that one out. I love a good thriller. Okay, so that was a conversation with friends. One of them went to the museum and the other one stayed at home. So you then can ask the other person, and you, how was your weekend? What did you do? Let's read one more here. So we have Lewis says, hey guys, how did you all enjoy your last weekend? Shirley says, mine was great. I went to a Christmas party at a restaurant. Santiago said, mine was well. I also went to a party that Shirley was at. Lewis says, oh no, I couldn't go to that party because I had to work that day, guys. Was it any good? Shirley says, yeah, the food was good, but they didn't have as many drinks going around. Santiago says, don't worry, you didn't miss much. It finished early anyways. Lewis says, great, guys. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. Okay, let's do one more. So we really want the place to be a place. So maybe you went to the mountains hiking or to some festival, or maybe you traveled, you went away, or you went to a church or some religious event. So Angeli says, hi, how are you? Fo says, hey, I'm very good. And you? Angeli says, I'm good, thanks. How was your weekend? Fo says, it was fantastic. And yours? Angeli says, pretty quiet. What did you do that was interesting? Fo says, well, I went to visit Kangaroo Island. It was an incredible experience. Angeli says, wow, sounds exciting. What did you do there? Fo, I got to see the incredible diversity of wildlife from kangaroos to sea lions. I also did some hiking on the natural trails and enjoyed the breathtaking views. Angeli says, I'm so jealous. It must have been a unique experience. How long did you stay there? Fo says, just a couple of days, but it was totally worth it. I definitely want to go back in the future. And Angeli says, yeah, we should definitely plan a trip together next time. It sounds like an experience I don't want to miss out on. Okay, so that was a good conversation. And that's what we have. So you can see that from the past simple, you can talk about where you went. You can ask someone, where did you go? Who did you see? What did you do? And you know how to respond. Okay, so now you are going to imagine that you visited an interesting place on the weekend. Okay, so create a conversation with two people and they're talking and asking each other. So make sure you only pick one place. Don't say, I did this, 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 and this. Imagine one place that you went to and talk about it. Tell that person what you did there, and the other person can ask you questions. Remember to use adjectives like it was amazing, or maybe you had a bad time. Oh, it was really bad. It was raining all the time. It was just too crowded. We didn't get to see anything. So it could be maybe a good experience or a bad experience. Okay, but you have to talk about one place and ask the person questions about that one place, just like the examples that we saw. Okay, so now you are confident in talking about a place that you visited in the past. Using your past simple, maybe it's regular verbs with the ed, or irregular verbs that just have their own rule. And the questions, remember, starting with the W. What did you see? Where did you go? Maybe it's a how question. How was your weekend? How did you get there? Okay, so you can be more confident when you tell someone where you went on the weekend. Maybe not just on the weekend. Where did you go on your trip? How was your trip? Or how was your travels, you know? Maybe you went somewhere traveling. Okay?